There's a moment, somewhere between wishing and receiving, where most people silently give up. They've prayed, visualized, affirmed, yet nothing seems to move. And in that quiet space of waiting, they start to believe something is wrong with them, or with the process. But the truth, Neville Goddard would say, is far more subtle. The delay isn't punishment, it's misidentification. You see, the hidden error between you and what you desire isn't about time, luck, or worthiness. It's about who you're being. You've been trying to reach your dream as the self who doesn't yet own it. You keep asking, searching, hoping, when all along, reality was simply mirroring the state you've chosen to remain loyal to. Neville taught that every state already exists. You don't create the reality you want, you select it. And what stands in the way isn't fate, karma, or divine delay. It's the invisible habit of identifying with lack. The self who wishes is not the self who receives. Until this truth sinks in, you'll keep standing at the door, knocking on a house you already own. So today we'll go deep into the root of this misunderstanding. We'll uncover how the gap between you and your desire isn't distance. It's simply a story you've been telling about who you are. Once that story changes, the world must follow. Most people think manifestation is about moving towards something. They see their desire as a point on the horizon, and themselves as travelers walking the path to reach it. But Neville Goddard taught that this very belief is the trap. The distance between you and it doesn't exist in space. It exists in identity. You're not walking toward your desire. You're living as someone separate from it. Think of it like tuning a radio. The station you want isn't far away. It's already here, vibrating in the air. But until you change the dial, you won't hear it. The law of assumption works the same way. The only reason your dream feels distant is because your emotional frequency still belongs to the self who's waiting, not the one who's living the end. We often mistake desire for a sign of lack. When you want something deeply, love, peace, success, your mind instantly labels it as not here. That label keeps the feeling real of not having. Neville Goddard would call this the hidden error. You keep affirming absence while believing you're affirming presence. It's not about chasing the wish-fulfilled Neville method. It's about identifying with it. The self who wants and the self who has cannot coexist. Every moment you think, when will it come? You reinforce the version of yourself who's still waiting. The key is not to close the gap through effort, but to dissolve it through recognition. This is where imagination creates reality, not by pushing the world, but by changing the lens. When you shift identification, the external world follows. But most people cling to what feels familiar, the identity of lack, the old self that survives through longing. It's not resistance, but it's habit. You can feel this in subtle ways. The moment you visualize your desire, do you feel peace or tension? If it feels like reaching, you're imagining from the old self. But if it feels like remembering, you're living as the new one. That emotional difference, that's the real separation and assumption Neville spoke of. Even spiritually, many confuse waiting with faith. They say, I'm trusting it will come. But faith doesn't wait. Faith knows. The moment you truly live in the end, you stop asking. The state itself becomes your evidence. You begin to see that the distance was only the echo of a misidentified self. This is why Neville often said, change your conception of yourself and you will automatically change the world in which you live. The world is not slow, it's obedient. It mirrors your self-image with perfect accuracy. When you see lack, it's not mocking you, it's showing who you're currently being. So, the question isn't, how do I get there? It's, who am I being right now? Every desire is a mirror, revealing the identity that must die and the one that must be born. When you see that clearly, you realize there was never a journey, only a recognition. And that recognition leads us directly into what Neville called the greatest secret, that every possible state of being already exists, waiting for your loyalty. Neville Goddard said, creation is finished. That one sentence could change your entire understanding of life. Every version of you, the poor one, the abundant one, the lonely one, the loved one, already exists within consciousness. You're not here to create, but to select. Yet the hidden error Neville warned about is that most people stay loyal to the wrong state, the self who's still waiting. Imagine walking into a library where every possible life is written in books. You're free to take anyone off the shelf and start reading. But out of habit, you keep picking the same old story. That's what happens when you keep identifying with lack. You've made loyalty to limitation your unconscious devotion. Loyalty is emotional. It's what you defend when no one's watching. If you constantly explain why things haven't worked or why it's hard, you're reaffirming the self of waiting. This is what Neville meant by remaining in the wrong state. It's not punishment, it's precision. The universe can only mirror the state you occupy. The law of assumption doesn't ask you to beg or to wait. It invites you to assume the end. When you persist in a feeling, even for a few moments, you're choosing your timeline. And the feeling real, as Neville said, is the secret key. Every emotion you nurture is an act of allegiance, a vote for the self you believe in. That's why so many struggle with manifestation. They try to affirm abundance while emotionally belonging to lack. They repeat words like, "I am wealthy," but feel fear when bills arrive. That emotional contradiction is loyalty to the old self. And until that loyalty shifts, the new state cannot stabilize. But loyalty can be re-educated. It begins with awareness. When you catch yourself explaining why it's not possible, stop and smile. You've just discovered the self you're no longer required to be. This small recognition is how you start breaking the invisible bond with lack. Neville's students often asked, "How do I know I'm in the right state?" His answer was simple: by the feeling. If the feeling is relief, ease, quiet certainty, you're home. If it's strain, doubt, or trying to make it happen, you're still loyal to the wrong identity. Feeling reveals allegiance. It's like switching chairs in a theater. The play doesn't change, your viewpoint does. Suddenly the same scene feels different. The actors didn't move, your perception did. That's what happens when you shift states. The world, like a stage, rearranges itself to match your new seat of consciousness. So if creation is finished, your only real work is selection. And you select not with effort but with attention. Wherever your inner gaze rests, that's where your reality unfolds. To move into a new state, you don't fight the old one, you stop feeding it. And once that loyalty begins to change, a new realization emerges. The desire was never outside. It was simply the mirror showing who you were meant to become next. This is where most seekers get trapped. They spend their lives trying to get things. More money, more love, more peace, not realizing that the very act of reaching reinforces the feeling of not having. Neville Goddard explained that the wish-fulfilled Neville method isn't about pursuit, but embodiment. When you try to get the desire, you're confirming you don't have it. When you become the one who has it, the game ends. Think of it this way: a poor man trying to get rich is still poor in consciousness. But the one who already is wealthy inside acts and thinks differently, long before the evidence appears. That inner posture, calm, expectant, certain, is the real bridge between invisible and visible. The feeling it real explained simply means this: you don't attract, you express. The world mirrors states, not words. You can pray all night for love, yet if you still see yourself as lonely, your prayer echoes in an empty room. Because you're not asking God, you're broadcasting self. The identity you carry is the frequency creation responds to. Neville often said, "You cannot receive what you are not conscious of being." Many people confuse spiritual growth with emotional striving. They believe if they visualize harder, meditate longer, or say more affirmations, they'll eventually break through. But manifestation doesn't reward effort, it responds to assumption. The state of trying is the clearest declaration that you're not it yet. You can't effort your way into being. Imagine trying to act like a confident person while still believing you're insecure. Every gesture will feel forced, every word unnatural. But when you truly are confident, when it's your identity, you no longer think about it. That's the subtle art Neville taught. Don't do from the state, be the state. This is why chasing feels exhausting, because it's the ego's endless loop. The self of lack is always chasing its own reflection, hoping someday it'll turn around and smile, but it never does. The moment you stop chasing and simply assume, the reflection changes, and because you did. Here's the irony. The harder you try to get it, the further it runs. But the moment you rest in being, it finds you. This is the paradox Neville pointed to when he said, "You must dare to assume the feeling of your wish fulfilled until your assumption has all the sensory vividness of reality. When the inner man moves, the outer must obey." This shift is subtle but powerful. You go from asking when will it happen to quietly knowing it already has. That knowing becomes your emotional home. From there, life begins to move with you, not against you. People call it coincidence, but it's consciousness aligning. To live the wish fulfilled isn't pretending or faking. It's remembering. Remembering the version of yourself who already lives in the end. And once you start remembering instead of chasing, a strange calm takes over. The peace that says, I no longer seek, I am. And that peace opens the doorway to a deeper realization. That desire itself isn't something to get. It's a mirror, revealing the next version of you waiting to be lived. Neville Goddard said that desire is not a signal of lack, it's divine guidance. It's the whisper of the greater self, saying, "This is who you are becoming." Yet most people misread that whisper. They see desire as something external, a thing to chase rather than a mirror reflecting the next version of themselves. Every longing is a revelation of identity waiting to be claimed. Imagine you're standing before a mirror holding a photograph of your dream life. The reflection won't change until you do. The mirror has no bias. It only reveals what stands before it. In the same way, the universe isn't withholding your desire. It's responding to the image you're offering through your state of being. The moment you shift identity, the reflection adjusts effortlessly. This is why Neville emphasized the law of assumption. To assume the wish fulfilled is not to daydream about a future event. It's to accept a new self-concept now. Your imagination creates reality, not by sending energy out, but by reorganizing your internal sense of I am. The outer world is simply catching up to your inner selection. Think about someone who constantly says, "I want peace." That very statement implies separation, as if peace were a place they could visit someday. But what if peace is a personality, not a destination? The moment they become peace, and through thought, speech, and tone, the world rearranges to meet them in kind. Desire, then, is an invitation, not a demand. When you feel a deep pull towards something, a relationship, a lifestyle, a dream, that pull is life asking you to remember who you truly are beneath the conditioning. The feeling of longing is simply the friction between your current identity and the one calling you forward. The beauty of this truth is that no effort is wasted. Even your frustration is sacred, because it shows you where you've been identifying too small. Each unmet desire points lovingly toward expansion, not punishment, but evolution. In Neville's language, it's the son remembering the father, the human remembering its divine source. Here's a practical way to see it. Next time you desire something, instead of asking, "How can I get it?" ask, "Who would I be if I already had it?" That single question dissolves resistance. Suddenly, you're not reaching, you're embodying. The energy changes instantly because you're moving from separation to union. This is the secret behind the phrase, "Feeling is the secret." Feeling isn't about emotion only, it's identification made real. The feeling bridges the seen and unseen. When you feel yourself as the fulfilled self, you've crossed the invisible line between wanting and being. That's when reality starts to echo your new tone. So the next time desire arises, don't suppress it or chase it. Listen. It's not trying to show you what you lack, but what you're ready to become. The wish-fulfilled Neville method isn't a technique. It's a conversation between your current self and your destined self. One is saying, "I want," and the other is whispering, "You already are." And the moment you dare to believe that whisper, you begin to feel something shift, a soft bridge forming between the one who wants and the one who is. That bridge is where practice begins. This is where Neville Goddard turned philosophy into practice. He never wanted people to just understand the law of assumption intellectually. He wanted them to feel it. The question, "If I were already living my desire, how would I feel?" is not a thought exercise. It's a doorway. It invites you to step into a parallel version of yourself, even if only for a breath. That single moment of genuine feeling shifts everything. The key isn't duration, it's quality. 1 second of true identification with your wish fulfilled outweighs hours of mechanical affirmations. Most people try to force the feeling, repeating sentences that sound spiritual but feel empty. Neville taught that the power lies not in repetition, but in saturation. One deep, vivid moment of inner conviction carries enough charge to set the whole process in motion. Try this before bed tonight. Close your eyes. Imagine your desire fulfilled, and instead of watching it like a movie, enter it. See through your own eyes. Touch the sheets of your new home, feel the ring on your finger, sense the quiet relief of knowing it's done. Don't analyze the scene, feel it real. This is what Neville meant by living in the end. The mind will argue. It will say, "But this isn't true yet." That's when you remind yourself, it's not supposed to be true yet. You're rehearsing the truth that will soon be. You're training the nervous system to recognize abundance as normal. Feeling it real, explained, means giving your body a preview of heaven before the world delivers the evidence. Even 1 minute of genuine embodiment plants the seed. The subconscious doesn't distinguish between imagination and reality. It accepts what feels real. So when you enter the state and stay there emotionally, even briefly, the subconscious says, "Oh, this is who we are now." And the outer world obediently mirrors that identity. This is why Neville advised doing it until it feels natural. The goal isn't excitement or ecstasy. It's normalcy. When your dream begins to feel ordinary inside, it's near. The extraordinary becomes mundane just before it manifests, because your consciousness has made it home. Don't underestimate small moments of faith. When you choose peace over worry, gratitude over complaint, you're entering the frequency of the fulfilled self. These subtle shifts are the true rituals of manifestation, not candles or crystals, but decisions of perception. And if you fall back into doubt, that's fine. Every time you return to the feeling, you strengthen the bridge between the two selves. The gap gets thinner. The false separation and assumption Neville spoke about begin to fade, replaced by quiet certainty. Think of it like tuning an instrument. The first few tries may sound off, but with every adjustment, the tone becomes purer. Eventually, you'll hit the perfect note, the vibration of already having. That note is what creation recognizes. And when you start playing that note consistently, through feeling, gratitude, and calm, something remarkable happens. Relief enters, the old tension dissolves, and you realize feeling itself was the bridge all along. Neville Goddard often said, "Feeling is the secret," not because emotion itself has magical power, but because feeling is the evidence of identity. When you truly assume the wish fulfilled, the feeling of relief arises naturally. That's the sign you've crossed the invisible bridge, from the self who seeks to the self who knows. The law of assumption works not through pressure, but through peace. Think of how it feels when a problem finally resolves. That subtle exhale, that quiet, "Ah, it's done." That's the vibration of creation fulfilled. Gratitude flows easily, not as forced affirmation, but as spontaneous response. This is what Neville meant by living in the end. The end feels calm, it doesn't grasp or hope, it rests. When people say they're feeling it real but still feel tense, they're not wrong, they're just mid-bridge. The old self hasn't fully let go yet. That's okay. Every drop of genuine gratitude loosens the grip of the old state. Feeling isn't proof you've manifested, it's proof you've shifted. The difference between the two selves is emotional tone. The self of lack feels urgency, the constant hum of not yet. The fulfilled self feels harmony, a stillness that says, all is well. The transition between those tones is the bridge Neville spoke of. You don't walk across it by effort, you float across it by acceptance. You can sense when the false separation begins to dissolve. You stop checking the mirror of reality for confirmation. You stop asking, is it working? And start living as though it already has. This inner knowing brings a strange peace, one that no evidence can shake. That's when you know you're living in the end. This bridge is built moment by moment. Each act of faith, each moment of surrender is another plank beneath your feet. Even small gratitudes, a smile, a quiet prayer, a whispered thank you, solidify your new identity. The feeling of peace is not a result, it's the process itself. Neville's students often misunderstood this, thinking the goal was to feel happy all the time. But he clarified, the true feeling isn't excitement, it's fulfillment. It's the emotional neutrality of completion. When you've already received, you don't celebrate endlessly, you rest. That rest is divine alignment. It's the same feeling you have after solving a riddle that once frustrated you. The tension vanishes, but there's no dramatic celebration, only understanding. You simply see. The world looks the same, yet everything inside feels lighter. That lightness is the language of manifestation. Once you've crossed that bridge emotionally, physical reality follows with mathematical precision. Circumstances rearrange to reflect your inner certainty, but by then you're not surprised. You were already living it inside. The external change feels like the natural next scene of a story you've already read. And as that calm begins to anchor in your daily life, you'll notice something else. The world may still test you with contradictions, but now you'll know. Those contradictions are not obstacles, only echoes of the old state fading away. This is where most people lose their peace. They apply the law of assumption, feel their wish fulfilled, and then the next morning, nothing seems to have changed. Panic sets in. Doubt whispers, maybe it's not working. But Neville Goddard taught that these moments are not failures. They're echoes. What you're seeing is the delayed reflection of the old assumption still fading from the mirror of reality. Reality, in its kindness, has inertia. It doesn't transform instantly because it gives you space to stabilize your new state. If the world changed the second you shifted emotion, you'd never learn persistence. The gap, what many call the delay, is simply your past momentum running its course. Let it pass. Imagine you're turning a massive ship. Even after you change direction, the vessel keeps gliding on its old path for a while. The engine has shifted, but the movement still reflects where it was heading. That's what's happening when appearances contradict your new assumption. Don't curse the lag. It's proof of transformation underway. This is why Neville warned against reaction. The moment you react emotionally to appearances, you've jumped back into the old state. You've told consciousness, I'm still the one waiting. The trick is to stay unbothered, to treat contrary evidence as a rerun, not a prophecy. You've already changed the script. Reality just hasn't caught up to the rewrite. Faith in this sense is emotional stillness. It's the decision not to measure truth by sight. When Neville said, disregard appearances, he didn't mean ignore life. He meant don't identify with the echo. Every time you choose calm over panic, you strengthen the new identity and weaken the old one. Here's a practical example. Suppose you've assumed the feeling of financial freedom, but a bill arrives. The old self panics, checks the balance, worries. The new self smiles and says, that's the last bill from the old state. That shift in perception changes everything. One response feeds fear, the other feeds faith. Remember, the law of assumption doesn't fail, our patience does. The subconscious needs consistency, not intensity. Each time you hold your inner vision steady amid contradiction, you prove to yourself that imagination creates reality. You're training your world to obey your knowing, not your nervousness. When appearances challenge you, it's a compliment. It means you've moved. The old energy resists collapse only when a stronger reality is emerging. Think of it like a candle flickering before it goes out. The brighter the flash, the closer the end. So bless the contradiction. It's the final scene before the new act begins. Neville used to say, persist in the assumption that it is already done until the feeling of reality becomes natural. That's not stubbornness, it's creative discipline. You're rehearsing your faith until it becomes second nature. Eventually, what once felt like pretending becomes the most obvious truth in the world. And when that peace stabilizes, when you can look at contradiction and smile, that's when the first signs of real change appear. Effortless alignment, unexpected opportunities, and a strange lightness in your heart that says, it's unfolding. You'll know the shift has begun not when fireworks go off in the sky, but when peace feels strangely normal. Suddenly, the anxiety that used to follow you everywhere goes quiet. You wake up lighter, more grounded, even without external proof. That calm isn't apathy, it's authority. Neville Goddard said the first evidence of manifestation is not outer change, but inner naturalness. This natural confidence feels different from motivation. You're not forcing belief anymore. You simply know. It's the same calm you feel when you remember where you parked your car. There's no rush to prove it's there. You've seen the end internally, and that certainty translates into a quiet, unshakable energy. That's what living in the end really means. One of the earliest signs that your assumption has taken root is the disappearance of effort. Things you used to push now flow. Conversations align. People appear at the right time. Solutions show up almost by coincidence. But it's not coincidence you are, it's consciousness synchronizing. The outer world finally received its new instruction. And notice this, your emotional reactions soften. Triggers that once felt personal no longer sting. You stop fighting circumstances because you understand they're just old data expiring. This emotional neutrality is not indifference, it's alignment. You've stopped giving power to appearances because you feel the truth underneath them. Even the body begins to reflect the change. Your breath deepens, sleep improves, and your mind quiets faster. That's because the nervous system has stopped bracing for lack. It's adjusting to the safety of fulfillment. Feeling it real explained from this perspective means your biology starts matching your belief. Neville called this the bridge of incidence. It's the phase where the world rearranges itself naturally, leading you step by step to the visible fulfillment. You don't have to manipulate it. You only follow the ease. Life begins to feel less like a maze and more like choreography, something unseen guiding you, perfectly timed. Another sign, gratitude appears for no reason. You start thanking God before the blessing arrives because deep down you sense it's already here. That gratitude isn't pretense, it's resonance. You're vibrating with completion, not craving. It feels like breathing again after holding your breath for years. Sometimes even the people around you notice before you do. They'll say, "You seem different, calmer, clearer, more magnetic." That's because your energy is no longer split between wanting and having. You've unified your consciousness. The old identity is dissolving, and others can feel the stability of your new one. There's also an effortless confidence in decision-making. You stop overthinking because you trust your inner knowing. You realize that intuition isn't guessing, it's remembering from a higher timeline. The more you listen, the smoother things unfold. What used to feel like luck now feels like alignment. And as this new state becomes natural, you'll sense the most profound sign of all, a deep, quiet satisfaction, even before results appear. That satisfaction isn't laziness, it's faith fulfilled. You've stopped waiting for the world to prove your belief, because you finally understand you're the one proving the world. When Neville Goddard spoke about living in the end, he was describing a profound shift, not a mental trick, but a full identity transformation. Deep embodiment happens when you stop seeing yourself as the one who's trying to manifest and start living as the one who already has. It's the moment when effort dissolves and your life begins to move in quiet rhythm with your inner conviction. The seeker identity is subtle. It hides behind spiritual language. I'm working on it, I'm aligning with it, I'm getting there. But as long as you're getting there, you're not there. The seeker lives in endless becoming. The embodied self lives in being. The difference isn't knowledge, it's ownership. To embody the wish fulfilled is to wake up in a new emotional home. You no longer wake with anxiety asking, "How long will it take?" Instead, you wake with gratitude saying, "This is who I am now." That shift isn't loud or dramatic. It's quiet, consistent, and deeply felt. Reality simply adjusts around your certainty. The seeker reacts to circumstances. The embodied self creates them. When the old world presents challenges, you no longer panic, you smile. You understand that what appears before you is only feedback from old assumptions expiring. That calm authority is the language of mastery. You've stopped arguing with shadows. At this level, imagination creates reality not as a practice but as a habit of being. You imagine naturally, effortlessly. You don't do sessions, you live from vision. Neville once said, "Your imagination is yourself." When that becomes real to you, you realize there's no longer a line between prayer and life. Every moment is prayer in motion. You'll notice your desires simplify. The more you embody, the less you chase. Things that once felt urgent lose their grip. You no longer seek validation or signs. The fulfillment you once begged for now radiates from your presence. That's because you've merged with your creator, and creation now speak the same language. I am. Even conversations change. You stop explaining your journey and start embodying its fruit. People will sense something has shifted, a quiet confidence, a grounded joy. They might ask what you're doing differently, and you'll smile because you know it's not something you do, it's who you've become. This deep embodiment rewires your perception of time. You stop waiting for someday and begin living in now. The present becomes your portal. Each moment is another chance to reaffirm the self who already is. This timelessness is freedom, the end of chasing, the birth of presence. Living as the one who already is doesn't mean ignoring the world. It means defining it from within. You understand that circumstances are not creators, but mirrors. When something unwanted appears, you don't fight it. You simply re-identify. You return to the feeling of completion, and reality obediently adjusts. And as this embodiment stabilizes, you begin to see the true miracle. The world never needed fixing. It was always reflecting your state perfectly. The only correction ever required was within, the recognition that you were never becoming anything. You were remembering who you've been all along. Neville Goddard said that the greatest discovery you'll ever make is realizing that the world is yourself pushed out. The hidden error, then, was never outside. It was in misidentification. You kept trying to change shadows instead of light, believing the problem was circumstance when it was actually self-concept. The moment you remember who you are, the illusion of separation collapses. For years, people chase signs, timing, or alignment, waiting for the world to prove something it was never designed to provide. But Neville taught that the outer world is not a test, it's a mirror. Correct the reflection by correcting the image. When you change the one who looks, what's being looked at changes automatically. It's law, not luck. This remembrance isn't arrogance, it's restoration. You're not claiming to be greater than others. You're claiming to be one with the source that creates through you. The law of assumption isn't about ego, it's about origin. To assume your wish fulfilled is to return to your divine authorship, where imagination creates reality and feeling writes its signature. Most people forget this truth because they confuse humility with smallness. They think saying "I am" boldly is pride, when in fact it's worship. To speak "I am" consciously is to acknowledge God within. The feeling it real, explained by Neville, is simply the act of letting the divine feeling of completeness replace human doubt. When you correct the self, you stop negotiating with the world. You stop begging for change because you realize the change already happened in consciousness. The phone call, the opportunity, the healing, they're all byproducts of your remembered identity. What once felt like miracle now feels inevitable. Even resistance becomes sacred once you see this. The moment life confronts you, you understand it's not punishing you. It's revealing what you've forgotten. Every challenge is an invitation to return to "I am." Instead of reacting, you realign. That's the secret difference between the awakened and the asleep. Correcting the self means taking full ownership of your inner movie. You stop blaming the actors because you finally recognize yourself as the director. If you don't like the scene, you rewrite it from within. That's what Neville called revision. And once you live from that authority, fear dissolves because you remember the pen was always in your hand. The moment of realization often feels simple. There's no thunder or lightning, just quiet recognition. You look around and think, "It was me all along." That thought doesn't inflate you, it humbles you. You understand that nothing was ever missing, only misperceived, and as you hold that awareness, you begin to see every desire differently. Each one isn't a thing to manifest, but a part of yourself calling to be known. Fulfillment stops being an achievement and becomes remembrance. You don't chase results, you reveal them. So when Neville said, "The hidden error between you and what you desire," he wasn't talking about fate or effort. He was talking about forgetfulness. You were never waiting for your dream to arrive. Your dream was waiting for you to remember who you've always been. Now that you've seen the hidden error clearly, the real question isn't when your desire will come. It's who you're being right now. Every wish, every longing is a mirror showing the next version of you waiting to awaken. You don't need more signs, more waiting, or more effort. You need remembrance, the quiet knowing that imagination creates reality and the feeling is the bridge. So tonight, before you fall asleep, practice it for yourself. Close your eyes and enter the end. Feel the relief of it already done. Let gratitude rise not as performance, but as truth. That's how you correct the self, not by trying to make the world change, but by embodying the one for whom it already has. Ask yourself gently, what would my life feel like if I stopped seeking and started being? Who would I become if I stopped asking for proof and started living from faith? The power was never in the waiting. It was always in the assumption. The world is waiting for your decision. If this message resonated with you, remember to subscribe and turn on notifications so you can keep deepening your understanding of Neville Goddard's teachings. Each week, we uncover another layer of consciousness, imagination, and the art of living in the end. Because once you remember who you are, everything you desire will stand revealed.